go. And I always start by saying we are recording. It's happening. Hello, Suhail. This is an amazing moment for me because I feel like I've known you for years.
Yeah, we've known each other for 5 years now.
Has it been 5 years? That's amazing. And we've never met,
Yeah.
but we
Mm,
do write each other, and I read
yeah.
what you write. It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, the same here. It's the same here.
We first met, let me see if I remember. We first met because you wanted to write something, and I was very excited about that. Was that right?
Yeah. Actually, I posted a comment on one of your blog posts. You got in touch with me. Hey, what do you know about this? And
I was
then we started
impressed.
talking.
You're right. I was impressed. You wrote something very smart, and I said, I need to know more about this person. And so Suhail has written an incredible piece, which I'm going to put a link to in this podcast, so you can read a little bit about him. And then we've stayed in touch through the Beautiful Voyager community. I think of you as one of my core Beautiful Voyager people out in the world. Can you
Mm,
tell us a little bit about where you are right now and just your life, where you live and, who you live with, just the basics?
I'm based in Dubai. Um, I've been here for about 6 years. I'm basically from India, and I if I have to tell what I do, I'll do depending on when you ask me. I'm doing a lot of things or nothing.
Well, you always are a writer. I mean, that's
Yes,
always true.
yeah, that's something which is close to my heart, and I do keep a blog, but on and off. I write sometimes. I don't write other times. This is a period of break for me from writing. I'm also running a business here in Dubai, and I also run a magazine, um, literature magazine online called the Bangalore Review.
The Bangalore Review is
Yeah,
very well done. You are a wonderful writer. I love your writing. And again, it's a literary magazine for people who want to check it out. How
yeah,
often
that's
does the
right.
Bangalore Review come out?
Every month we have a team working on it, like every month, a group of editors and articles come from all over the world, not just from India, even though it's called the Bangalore Review. Most of the writing comes from US, UK, different parts of India, and a very diverse set of voices. And we try to promote new writing more than the established writers.
That's a hard thing to do. I mean, I always appreciate someone who's finding new voices to share. That is not always the easiest. The thing that struck me about you is that you were at the beginning 5 years ago of your mental health journey. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, my mental health journey started in 2011 on a wrong footing, I would say. But things changed in about 2014, I guess, when I first got a real diagnosis. Because the first time my diagnosis was wrong, I went in a lot of wrong directions. And in 2014, I finally got to know, okay, this is something called anxiety. And there's a name for it, generalized anxiety disorder, which uh, which was just a start, so to speak. I went for therapy for some time. I went with medication for some time, but I did drop both at some point, feeling that okay, I'm good. I can handle this.
Yeah.
I have learned the tools. I have the tools to guide me through any situation, which I would be so many times proven wrong in the last 5, 6 years. So many times, and each time I would just go into my cocoon, my shell, which is usually my bed, in, and I'm in a blanket. I'm completely covered in the blanket, and I don't want to come out. So it's a cocoon, literally as well as figuratively.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I think one of the signs of anxiety is that you always are fighting for control. Like you always think, oh, I can handle this. I've got this. And, I don't need these tools or the medicine. And it's just like we have to learn over and over that we don't always have control.
you probably remember a lot of the times when I was crying out for help, like over the Slack Beautiful Voyager platform, and I didn't know what to do. And you would tell me, you probably need to see someone, professional help, take medication. And I was like, should I be doing it? Will it will it shut down a certain part of me if I start taking medication? And then there was therapy, which is like each time I tried therapy, it was so hard for me. People don't talk about this often, I guess, because therapy, getting the right therapist, first of all, is like
It's like dating, isn't it? It's like
it,
finding
it
like a
is, it
partner.
is,
Like
it
they
is.
don't tell you like, oh, you don't just go out and find a therapist and you're done. You have to, and by the way, I don't go to therapy now because I have not found my person. So I just want to be open about that. I am very aware of the challenges of finding the right fit.
Yeah, that was something I didn't realize for a long time. So I thought um, when a therapist tells me you have to do this and I can't do it, I start blaming myself. I start going through this guilt. Why am I not being able to do this? I should be able to do this. I can do so many other things. Why not this? And these are easy exercises. She or he asked me to come up with some things I have to write down, some thoughts. I've been through different types of therapy, mostly CBT, and most recently now, for the last 6 months, twice a week, I've been going through talk therapy, which is of the psychodynamic modality. And that led me to a lot of new discoveries, like stuff I didn't know, stuff I probably knew, but I was shutting out of my.
Do you
But
think that that is what you needed was talk therapy? I mean, is it feeling like this was what had to happen?
it's talk therapy is compared to what the other therapies did. Talk therapy seems very different in the way that you don't really get any answers, you don't really get any exercises to do, but you get this sense of you get the sense of having accomplished something over a certain period of time. It doesn't happen over one session, two sessions. And in the beginning, we thought we would need a session per week, but then I realized that I felt abandoned between each session. And then I spoke about this, and she said, "Okay, you probably need twice a week. Let's try that." And it felt so much better when I started. This must have been in July, end of July, August, something like that. And it was throughout the entire lockdown. Like in Dubai, the lockdown ended like in June, and throughout the lockdown, when I was literally locked up in the house. I was completely all right. I didn't have a single worry in the world. I was reading a lot. I was I was having fun with the family, to be frank. Even my wife was enjoying it. She said that she was getting a lot of me, more than usual. And I thought I have, and I was reading everywhere about people having tough time, being locked up, and people being anxious, depressed, lockdown and stuff. And I thought, okay, I've got through it. But then by July, August, things started changing. I started seeing that I was going into fits of rage unexpectedly. I just fly off the handle. I feel like throwing stuff, kicking stuff away, getting angry a lot of the time. And then I realized that before it really affects people around me, especially my kids, my wife, I realized that I needed to go for therapy. And I knew I didn't want to go for CBT because I had been through that path a few times, and each time I would drop out of it. Like there didn't seem to be a connection which I was forming with the therapist. So this time I felt like, and that's how I ran across this concept of talk therapy. And talk therapy, if I need to um, explain it to anybody, like my cousins asked me, what is this therapy you're doing? I said, this is what you see in the movies. Like you will be on a couch and there'll be someone listening. You just talk. They'll be taking notes. It's kind of that same thing because that's what I thought therapy was when I first started therapy back in 2014. But I found that it worked in different ways. I found that there are different forms of therapy. Even just last week, I heard of something new called EMDR.
Rapid eye
Something
movement.
related,
Yeah.
related to the eye movement. And I'm sure there are a lot more ways of doing this, but this is something I have fallen in the practice of now, and it's become like it's an automatic trigger. Like just yesterday, I had a session, and I had taken a nap in the afternoon. Just 2 minutes before, I didn't set an alarm, but just 2 minutes before the time of therapy, I automatically woke up. Like, oh, it's time. It's time
It's
for my
time.
therapy.
It's time.
And
Suhail, when you went to find your therapist, did you like your first therapist or did you have to try different ones? How did that work?
this time, it's the one I found first. Like I wrote to a few people. Uh, the one which answered fastest and the one which kept replying with each question I asked was the one I chose because I realized this person has the time. I didn't want to go into what her credentials are and all that. I'm not an expert to tell whether that's right because we I just had an experience back in 2019. Someone close to me needed therapy, and I have become a big evangelist of mental health. Whenever
I
there's
love
someone
that.
who needs someone needs help, I am at the forefront. Okay, let's do this. This is what you need to do. And I always felt that I knew stuff about this, and I thought I knew quite well. But this was one bad experience we had. So whenever I need a therapist or a reference, I write to someone in India, some people I know who are well connected to the mental health community, connected to the institutes in India, so that they will refer to me someone who is based here in Dubai or someone who is based in India who can do a Zoom session. And this time, on 2019, someone close to me. They needed help, and someone highly recommended a person in Dubai, and it was a bit of. I think I've told this to you Amanda, before, that it's very difficult to get help for mental health in Dubai, and it's usually very, very expensive.
I
And
know
a
we've
lot
talked
of
about
the,
that before, right? We've talked about that before. I've looked up places in Dubai and I'm like, this seems
yeah,
very difficult.
yeah. And there are no communities as such, like a community like Beautiful Voyager. It doesn't exist. And the other thing is, it's not really regulated. It's not well regulated. There's, people don't understand. Like, I was once stopped at the border. Sorry, I'm digressing a lot.
That's
Is that
okay.
okay? I
Absolutely.
was I was once stopped at the border because I was carrying meds, like recently, after I started medication, and I had a prescription, but they didn't know what. They said this is a control medicine. Why are you holding it? I said I have a prescription. What is it for? Is it for your back pain? I said no, it's for. I kept explaining it's a psychiatric
They
medicine.
didn't
He was
understand.
asking me. He was asking me if it's for my back pain, and I still it's for over here. And then he said, "Okay, you can go." So
Thank
the
goodness
awareness
he
is,
understood eventually.
yeah. So the awareness is really bad, and we. So this friend of mine went for therapy, and she would sit through the therapy for 1 hour every week, and she went for almost like 6 months, and every session the therapist would give her the same exercise. Listen, dear, you have to do this. When you do this, we'll go forward. And this was someone who wasn't being able to do the exercise given, and she was self-paying. She didn't have most of the insurance here doesn't cover psychiatry or psychology.
So it was a ton of money. She was going to this person for 6 months, always getting the same exercise and paying a lot of money,
Yeah,
but never
I,
doing it.
I don't know. I don't know if it would be a lot of money in US, but let's say it's about $75 a session, which is a lot of money for someone who is in the middle class over here. And a lot of the time, it seems we learned lately that a lot of the times these sessions were about um, the therapist, her personal stuff. She would talk about her personal stuff. She would be answering phone calls. And with all of that, can you imagine this friend of mine? She was so persistent. She kept going, thinking that there is
She
something
was
wrong with
trying to
me.
do the right thing, right? She was trying to do that. She wanted help. She was looking for help. She was trying
Yes,
to do the right thing. And it's
yes,
just, it's terrible.
and
It's so frustrating to me that people can be
and
like
anyone
that.
else, I know for a fact that I would have dropped out in a month or two. But this person, she went through it, and because her husband was paying for it, and he didn't want to feel like he didn't do enough, so he
Right.
would pay
He
for it.
he wanted to support her. She wanted to do the right thing.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
and and a lot of the times it seems this person would just uh, shame uh, my friend for
My
not
I have
having
a
done the
friend who
exercise.
live I have a friend who lives in Ethiopia who had a very similar experience recently, who was shamed for the way that he is. And it's in therapy. And it was just
Yeah,
terrible. It's terrible.
like, how many times have I told you how to do this? Why can't you understand? Bring your husband in. And then the husband goes in, and the husband tries to understand what it is. The husband tries to explain it back at home, and the husband figures that even he doesn't understand it too well.
Oh my God.
And he never for once thought that he was doing the therapist's work for her. And during the session, about half the session was gone in phone calls, people walking in, and things, stuff that was happening at home, like a lot of this stuff. And eventually, um, 3, 4 months into the therapy, she was told, you know what, you need medication. Without medication, I can't help you. A good therapist could have been able to tell that in like 2 or 3 sessions.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Now, your therapist was good. You found somebody good who was not like this, right?
Yeah. So the thing I'm coming to is this is something which shook me. Like we think that these are people who came through recommendation and recommended by the institute, and we now know that when someone is starting therapy, especially in CBT or DBT, you're supposed to be given. Uh, I mean, you need to get an assessment report, a treatment plan, how many sessions you're going to take, and 3 or 4 sessions down the line, there might need to be a change because you're not responding to this treatment plan. So the therapist would discuss with you that this is not working out, so you will probably have to try something else. And a lot of the stuff this particular therapist was doing was strictly no in a therapy, answering a call in between therapy.
And there was no
Talking about personal.
regulation. I mean, there's no oversight. So this thing just happens.
Yeah. And the patient, she didn't even know that she was supposed to ask for all this. She didn't know that there was supposed to be a certain limit, like it should have been 10 to 12 sessions at the most.
How can we educate people about this? I mean, this just makes me want to educate people.
This is something which I thought I knew how to do this. I thought I knew how to advise people on this stuff. And then I realized that there's more stuff we don't know. And this can only happen if not just us as patients getting aware, but also the regulatory authority,
The industry of
as such.
psychology actually takes stands on what to expect and what should be expected around different kinds of therapies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That needs to be there, that education, that awareness. And anyway, coming back to my story. So I found finally someone who was very empathetic. Is it empathic or empathetic? Okay, never mind. She started seeing stuff the way I was feeling it, instead of being told time and again that just do it, just get out and do it, just go for your walks. Why is it so difficult for you? For the first time, I felt like I'm being heard. She was saying, like, this must be so hard for you. This time must be so hard for you. You're going through a really difficult time. You must accept it. And then we started talking. She started asking me about my past, my childhood, and stuff started tumbling out of the closet. Stuff I never talked about myself. I've never told you this, Mel, but between the age of 10 and 14, I grew up in a boarding school, and in all that time, I was sexually abused. all the time, like from the age of 10 till the time I was 14 when I left that place.
4 years of abuse.
Yeah. And these were not just one person or two. These were people. These were people who were. So there's a boarding school. There were kitchen workers. There were teachers.
All
There were
adults
older students
and older students.
and older students.
So this culture was the culture of the boarding school. Were all kids being abused?
No, a lot of them were, but um, it was something which people openly talked about over there in between the students. Like they had nicknames for people who we need to stay away from.
Yeah, like watch out for that guy. He's gonna try to get
Yeah,
you in a corner and he'll do
yeah,
stuff to you. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not always easy, but I fell into it, and it was like a downward spiral. Like each time another person came, they would just say, "I know what you did. I'm gonna talk about it."
You blamed yourself. You had shame and blamed yourself.
Yeah, and I felt like, oh my God, I don't want to be exposed. And I would just go with them. I would just, it was so hard during that time. I remember that those days must be my probably the worst days of my life. Like even now, I have a lot of friends from that school, but when we meet each other, the stories they remember, I have no recollection of.
You shut down.
They remember,
You shut
they
down.
remember, yeah, they remember a lot of the fun stuff. For me, it's just it's just all this bullying I went through, and for the longest time, I thought I'm probably gay, I'm probably bisexual,
Yeah.
I'm probably a willing, um, I'm probably complicit in this. I brought this on myself. I never thought that I was a victim.
Your whole life
And
up until like last year, you thought that.
no, the first time I realized, so I don't know if you've heard of um, Benjamin Law. He's a writer from Australia, one of the early and famous writers in like 21st century writer, but one of the guys who first got a lot of fame writing uh, both fiction and non-fiction related to LGBTQ. And he came to Bangalore
Mm.
to give a talk. And after the talk, I just shadowed him. I walked around with him, asking him questions about homosexuality um, and a lot of the stuff I was asking were related to what happened with me in my childhood. And at some point, he turned to me and said, Suhail, I think you're confused between being gay and And it was a moment of shock for me to realize that, because that's a word I've heard in media, I read a lot about abuse, but never for once did it occur to me that I was a victim of abuse.
It's so
And
sad. That makes me so sad that you lived for so long thinking that was your fault. That makes me so sad. That's a long lifetime to be thinking that something was your fault.
I I didn't talk about it again to anyone all these years. And I think you have read about what I wrote in 2011 when I went to a psychologist again, wrong diagnosis and all that. He even prescribed medication for me. Stuff that happens in India.
He was misdiagnosed. The thing that Suhail is talking about is he was misdiagnosed. He was taken down a wrong path. It was terrible.
Yeah, he said I was bipolar and
Yeah.
that I need medication, and he prescribed a medication which no psychologist is ever supposed to do. So even to that person, just casually I mentioned that I had this childhood thing because it was just a few months after my meeting with Benjamin Law.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that this thing happened. And he said, yes, I can see that. That's the sort of thing that would happen to you, which made me feel like, oh my God, I give some kind of energy which is drawing people to me this way. And so I carried all this with me. And remember, this is the same guy who also told me that you will die a lonely death. A psychologist, no less.
This person is evil. Sounds evil.
Yeah. So all these I'm carrying with me. And at some point, I was talking about this with my therapist last year. And I said, I didn't initially talk about it. I was telling about how certain stuff feels to me like bullying, like an interaction with a client. I would feel like I'm being cornered, I'm being bullied. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I would just give him what he wants.
Yep.
Like I've done a lot of free service for clients. I have let people step on me a lot of times because I feel intimidated by the conflict. I don't want to get into a conflict, and I would just be the
survival mechanism. Survival mechanism that you learned as a child.
I thought I was a giver, or I was being a nice guy, but what I was really being was being really afraid of being in that position once again. So I talked about this with my therapist, and I told her that each of these instances, when someone tells me that you have to do it or something like that, I can even remember to the exact date and time of certain things which happened. Like 2014, on this particular month, my boss at that point, he told me to do this. And that was a very hard moment for me. To that extent, I remember each incident. And I said, each of those incidents remind me of my childhood in boarding school when I was bullied a lot. And this bullying is not just part of the abuse I encountered, it's also separate. A lot of bullying around people who thought that I was this guy. I was labeled as this guy. Who one time shared bed with a lot of other people. And for different reasons, I was bullied. And all of that time, I remember that I used to walk around with a heavy heart. I used to get into fights also a lot of the time. But it was always me who was bruised and bloodied. And I have a scar over here. By the
Scar
way.
from that time.
Yeah. The physical scars were okay, but the mental scars I didn't realize until I started talking to my therapist. And as she dug more into this issue, we saw a pattern that is being repeated ever since my childhood. I would bunk my exam in college sometimes because I was intimidated. I just didn't feel like going and writing that exam. I would just bunk. And my parents were quite supportive. I would call them and say, I didn't write the exam today. They would say, it's okay, take it easy.
Did
But
they know
they didn't know.
of what did they didn't know anything? They still don't know.
They
recently know. Okay.
I until recently they didn't even understand what I was going through. But my sister recently talked to them and told this is a medical condition. For a long time, they told me that whatever I'm feeling, this anxiety, these moments of depression, that's because I didn't have enough faith.
Right.
That I should be praying more.
That's also cultural. Yeah.
So my sister just asked them, would you do the same if you got cancer?
Right. Good for you. And good for your sister.
And my sister also for a long time used to believe that.
But she changed.
She changed. I think she moved to UK, and from there she probably learned more about this. And she talked to me once, I think in 2019 or something. She talked to me. She told, I never realized that this is something you can really have. And this is the true of so many of my friends. Just recently, a friend of mine told, until you went through this, I always thought that this is just a made up thing. That just people are just lazy and they just cook up this excuse that they're depressed. And because he knew me so well, and when I explained it to him, he realized that, oh my God, this is real. So many friends came to know about mental health issues when I started talking about it.
Yes. And I mean, I've always said, Suhail, you are such a leader. You are the second I heard from you, I felt that you're a leader. You share things that others don't share. Right now you are sharing about sexual abuse in childhood. That is not something that many people even figure out a way to talk about. When you made those connections with your therapist, how has your life changed since then?
Oh, it went for a toast immediately after that. In early September, end of August and early September, I had a terrible breakdown. And until that point, I was not taking medication. The last time I took medication was in 2014, which I abruptly stopped at that point. But this time I was way more low than ever before. I would just be still. I would be in the car for hours together, just sitting in the car, not moving to the next destination. And then I realized August, I was having a real breakdown, a nervous breakdown, not being able to do a single thing. I had an emergency call with my therapist at that time, and she said it's okay to take medication. It's okay to take help when you need it. Because she knew that I had some aversion to medication. And so for the first time in a long time, I went and met a psychiatrist who prescribed me some antidepressants. And again, it was like, I thought this would be like magic pills. I take this and all of a sudden I'm
Nope.
well. And of course, I remember but I'm taking a much stronger medication. This time around, I was taking much stronger medication than I was taking in 2014. And it took me around 2 months to get out of that state and actually start functioning again. In those 2 months, of course, I had the support of therapist, my family. When I say my family, it's my wife, because my parents didn't know what was happening. And my sister, to some extent. She is based in UK, but I would call her sometimes to tell her what I was going through. And of course, a few friends who would call me like every 2-3 days and say, they would just keep saying, "You're not alone." And that meant a lot. For the first time, I was not hearing something like, "What you're going through is nothing. There are people going through far worse. Why don't you?" This is the usual stuff I hear. Why don't you cheer up? Why don't you be grateful? Why don't you be grateful for what you have? And for the first time, people just didn't say anything. They just said, "You're not alone. We are here for you." And that felt like a lot.
I can tell that you're so much stronger actually because you want to do this conversation. To me, that is a huge sign that you are in an amazing, much better place than you were.
I hope so. I don't know really. I still have trouble with a lot of stuff. I still have a lot of trouble with decision making.
But these things take a really long time. I mean, you're still very early. You're very early on the journey of your medication. This new information and talking openly about what you experienced as a child, these are new. And I'm very curious about what happens in a couple of years, because it's almost like an explosion of information.
Exactly. It's a lot of information suddenly. And I talked about, like, I recently had to change the psychiatrist also. Like I said before, they're very expensive here. And so I had to change the doctor. So the doctor I'm seeing now, he used to be the head of children's psychology in NIMHANS, which is in India. NIMHANS is probably the best institute for mental health in Asia, if not India.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If not Asia, at least in India, it's the best. But I'm sure it's one of the best in Asia as well, because it's a research center and a lot of stuff happens. And this guy, this new doctor, he used to be the head of children's psychology. And I talked to him about, and now it's become easier for me. Like you saw just now, I was able to talk without actually into tears. The first few times I talked about my childhood, it's become so much easier now to talk about it because I've come to accept it, that it happened. And so I talked about it to him, and he said, "This is one of the worst afflictions society has, probably higher up than even cancer. And it doesn't get enough attention because he used to work with children from villages, school children, usually in the adolescent and early teenage, or even late teens, girls, boys, all the same. He used to talk to them. He used to have group therapy. And involuntarily, it always came out that there is a lot of incestuous stuff happening. There is a lot of molestation. There's a lot of abuse. It's rampant.
And just unspoken. No one talks about it.
Unspoken. No one talks about it. And even with his practice here, he tells me that 4 out of 5 patients, or roughly around that many, who comes with anxiety or depression, when he investigates, like this guy, even though he's a psychiatrist, he does a mix of therapy and medication. He doesn't always rely on medication. So he has these sessions with them when he makes them talk about the past and all that. And in 4 out of 5 cases, he says every time there's anxiety, depression, there's also
Incest or sexual abuse.
Or some sort of trauma.
Yeah.
Childhood trauma. A violent household.
Abuse.
A lot of the times it happens. And it is something, that is the reason I said I reached out to you about a couple of weeks ago. I thought, if I have to talk to Meredith, it's going to be about this, because now I've written about my experiences a couple of times, once on my blog, once on your blog. And it's like a trilogy now. This is the third part of it, which I never talked about in public, which few people outside my wife, my sister, and now my parents, and my therapist. Apart from that, just a couple of friends know about it. And they also came to know about it only just now.
Wow. I'm so honored that you chose to talk about it in this way with me. And to share it with the people who are listening, who are people that are supportive and understand, because that's what the community is about.
That's what I always loved about the Beautiful Voyager community. Like I used to say, it's like X-Men.
I was going to say it's Charles Xavier. You always said it's the Charles Xavier School, but it is true. I mean, honestly, in talking to you, I keep thinking, oh my goodness, Suhail is going to do. I mean, you have no pressure to do anything, but your voice is very powerful and you are a leader as you come to understand this information. And that is, it doesn't always feel that way, but that pain that you're experiencing is also making you stronger in a way that I can see.
So it's like you said, it's just going to be a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And my therapist doesn't make it any easier. She is always listening, and almost always she ends with a question for me, which I toss in my head over and over again until I realize, oh, that's what she meant. And it's supposed to work in that way. It feels like I came up with it, but she just prods me on that direction.
Well, she's a
And
lighthouse, right? She's the lighthouse.
yes,
She is a
she's
lighthouse
the
lighting
lighter.
your way.
Yeah, just last week, we were on Clubhouse now, so I'm also on Clubhouse. I'm interacting with people on Clubhouse. I met a person who is also a, survivor of sexual trauma. I haven't asked her whether she faced it in adulthood or childhood. I'm not sure about that, but she talked about therapy, EMDR, and stuff like that. And then she said something very important. This relationship, your relationship with your therapist, is the most intimate relationship in your life.
Wow.
Not even with your spouse, you're going to have that kind of a sharing relationship. You're going to speak out everything,
Wow.
which and until you can do that, until you can share at that level, you cannot claim to have a good therapist or a good
Mm-hmm.
relationship in therapy. Because
Mm-hmm.
at least in talk therapy, this is very important because CBT works in different way,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
DBT in different way, but talk therapy, when it's psychoanalytic or psychodynamic, it has to have that relationship
Mm-hmm.
where even appearing time after time in sessions is a cause for celebration. It's like I'm supposed to draw a parallel to that in my life. When I had difficulty going for walks, she showed me the parallel that there is something also very difficult
Yes.
here, which
Yes.
you're doing twice a week, and you've never missed one session. And then I realized that I could do it, but in a different way. It's not like someone telling me you need to go out for walks, you need to have your exercise. So, yeah, so eventually, what I'm finding out, I'm reading books also on this subject. I'm reading books like probably you've heard of the Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Walker, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm now reading a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is also related to trauma.
That's a good title.
So, yeah, so these are books from which I find out that it's not just the stuff which I found out, like an unstable career. I've had an unstable career. I walk out of almost everywhere where there's something goes wrong, and I'm like, no, I cannot work here. This place is not for me. So I'm always looking for this perfect place, perfect kind of thing where everything is so, beautiful. But it never happens.
Right. Right.
And I keep running away from these things.
Yeah.
Now I realize why I'm running away.
Yeah.
What is it?
I mean, I unfortunately have to leave in 2 minutes, which makes me sad, but I wonder, Suhail, if we can do another
Oh, I didn't
podcast.
realize we took.
I know. I mean, it was amazing.
I'm
You're
sorry.
you're
This was supposed to
incredible.
be
No,
half
no,
an
no.
hour.
No, you're incredible. It's fine to do longer. I wonder if we could do another one maybe in 6 months and see how things have changed, because this is a big moment you're in now, and like, let's revisit it maybe if you're up for it.
Maybe. Let's see.
We'll see how you're feeling. We'll see, maybe in a year we'll see how you're feeling. But I am so proud of you, as you know, someone who's out in the world, like as a cheerleader for you. But I am also amazed by you, because this is just such a big moment to share something so that could have been so shameful. But actually, when you talk about it, we realize how many people have experienced this, and how people listening to this will have connections with what you're saying. So I just
Yes,
really want
I'm
to
sure.
thank you.
I'm sure there will be someone who is listening to this somewhere who also had the same. And the only way out of it, I'm not saying it has to be medication, but there definitely needs to be therapy. Whether you had a bad childhood in one way or the other, it need not be sexual. It can be a violent household or something of that sort. Like people whose parents, father went for a war or something. Veterans. Veterans children usually have a lot of these issues because veterans come back with a lot of these
If
issues.
you experience trauma in this way, either as a child or later, you will
Yes,
have to deal with it. This
yes.
comes from
And
someone who has experienced this.
yes, therapy is the way to go through it. And that's all.
Well, I
Thank you
love
so
getting
much,
to see
Meredith.
you. Thank you, Suhail. It's so good to see your face.
You
I'm so
you've been
excited.
you've been a pillar of support all through these years, and I'm so
I
glad I've
hope to
had this
always,
talk with
yeah,
you.
I am too. I'm so glad we got to talk. You made me so happy. And I can't wait to see what keeps happening over time because your journey is very inspiring.
Thank you so much, Meredith.
Have a good day or a good evening.
You too. Good night. Actually, I'm gonna sleep
Good
now.
night. Good night.
Have a
Bye
good
bye.
day. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.